IMFC Radio vous est présenté par LABP Climatisation. Notre mission, travailler pour votre confort. Par Dr Graziella Giargiura, soins dentaires pour toute la famille. Sharp, la technologie au service de la beauté. Par Aries, fabriqué pour la vie, fabriqué pour vous. Et par Europa, un café italien de torréfaction supérieure. IMFC Radio est propulsé par Patreon. Merci à nos abonnés et bonne émission.
Salut tout le monde et bienvenue dans ce Flash Info édition du jeudi 27 août 2020 sur les ondes de IMFC Radio et diffusé live sur nos 3 plateformes, soit Twitter, Facebook et imfcradio.com. Mon nom est Gavino Desfalco et sans plus tarder, on va rejoindre nos panélistes Jean-François Dos Santos, Jérémy Filosa, Tristan D'Amour. And for the second time on our show, first time this year, we have the honor to host the Canadian Premier League Commissioner, Mr. David Clanachan. Mr. Clanachan, thank you for taking the time for IMFC Radio this morning. How are you?
Bonjour, ça va bien?
Ça va bien.
Très bien, merci.
David, you know, it's been a very tough year worldwide with pandemic, COVID-19, and the things that are going on south of the border as we speak. But the league and your management found a way to go on throughout all the things that I mentioned. The fact that right now there is a tournament going on in the CPL in a bubble in PEI. I mean, it must be the biggest accomplishment for your organization.
Well, it certainly was a big part of being able to continue the momentum that we've had, that we started to build in 2019, right, in our inaugural season. So it's been fantastic. A lot of work, a lot of support from our owners, but also from the players and the coaches and the entire team as we put it together. Most people would not have bet on us being able to do it. In fact, you know, if I go back to March and April, I think people were very concerned that we would even have a season at all. But it was vital to us that we continued to be seen in the eyes of our fans and supporters and Canadians in general. And I think it's worked out very well for us.
Mr. Commissioner, what have been the things that you have noticed since the beginning of this tournament? Had you taken any notes from what the MLS had done, NBA had done to make sure everything was going to be running smoothly? Because from what we understand at this point, there haven't been any cases. Everything has been working out pretty well. I think there have been a few time changes, but aside from that, nothing major. Tell us about, you know, how everything is functioning at this point.
Well, we spent a lot of time planning. You know, people were saying to us, it's taking a long time for you to get this done. The issue for me was it was to do it right. We weren't forced to rush back because we didn't pause a season. We hadn't started yet. So we had the opportunity to take a little bit extra time. We spent a lot of time talking to leagues across the world, not just only in our sport, but others. And so we saw some of the things they did. You know, some leagues, they didn't talk to the players soon enough. Some didn't take their health and safety protocols as maybe as stringent as what we have in Canada. We recognized right away Canadians expect health and safety first and foremost. And so we did all those things very right. And that, I think, has helped us. The key thing is we also then looked at how do we make it entertaining, knowing that there's not fans and supporters in the stands makes it very difficult, right? And so to be able to watch the games on TV, we tried some new technology, which gave us that kind of artificial intelligence around the stadium, which obviously helped our sponsors and our partners there. So it's worked out very well, and it's been entertaining. And I think most importantly, second year, our sophomore season, you're seeing better football. I think there's better football being played out on the field, and that's important.
Obviously, the tournament has been, regarding fans in the stands, it has been played without fans in the stands. Could it be something that it could change maybe during the tournament as the tournament goes on?
Well, I think, I think people in PEI are hoping that could happen maybe with minor soccer players and things like that. That's been brought up in a statement before. And so it depends on where we are from a perspective of the league itself and what the province will let us do. That's the key. You guys have heard me say this before. I'm the eternal optimist. The glass is always half full for me, right? So I hope that we can get some of that, because I think, when you see these young men playing the games, they're the heroes for the young players that are out there, right? And I think there's a lot of minor soccer players in PEI that would love, and even potentially New Brunswick, if they were able to get across the bridge, to come and see some of these future stars playing.
Mr. Commissioner, thanks for taking the time. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask that question in light of what's going on in the National Basketball Association, in the WNBA, in the MLS, and I'm in Major League Baseball as well. We've seen a lot of players taking a stand for social injustice, racial injustice, and we do recognize that this is not an American problem. It's not solely an American problem. My question would be, and I'll have easier questions for you, trust me, but if the players so choose to not play a game, and to take a stand, and we've seen it from your league, from Pamadou Ka, who's been vocal about racial injustice. Would the CPL stand with the players in a decision to not play a game?
Oh, 100%. In fact, I just came off a conference call with a number of players just now. So we're talking with the players. We need to do more of that. We want our players to have a louder voice and tell their stories as well. Racism is something that none of us can put up with in globally. I think we're a more advanced society than what we show at times, and that goes right across the globe. It's not just any one country that has this issue. We all have to deal with it, and it comes in many forms, right? So I think it's very important that our players are able to use their voice and the platform that they have, because they do have followers as well. But we as a league also have to take that stance, and we have to do it arm in arm. I think it's very important that we do that and that we support each other. So yeah, no, we're having those discussions. We're doing some of those things, and I think you'll see even more of that as we move forward from a social media perspective, because the voice has to come from a source that's credible, right? That's the key thing.
Mr. Clanachan, I just want to talk about the Canadian Championship in 2020. We know that this year the Island game winner will face either Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver in a one-game final. It must be very exciting to know that a club from the CPL will be one win away to move on in the CONCACAF Champions League. And we all know, as a soccer fan, anything can happen in one game.
Yes, I think it's a fantastic format. I think Canada Soccer made the right decision in very tough circumstances. There was obviously different, back and forth on how this should work. When it was decided that it was the CPL champion from the Island Games against the winner of the three MLS clubs playing against each other in the round robin that they're in right now, I was disappointed, because I was looking forward to two CPL teams in the final, but. But I didn't get that. But I think, yes, it's great. I mean, Canadians, we as Canadians, we love Canadian teams playing against each other, right? And so to see this happen, I think it's certainly going to be a made-for-TV event for sure.
Mr. Clanachan, this week I read an article in a newspaper in France, which is called 20minutes.fr, so 20minutes.fr. And the article was very interesting, because they were talking about how France and teams in France should start scouting leagues like the CPL. It specifically mentioned that the CPL was one of the leagues that scouts should start looking at. What can you tell us about how things have gone with Atletico Ottawa so far? And is there a chance that some sort of affiliation is made here in Quebec with a future team, possibly with a club in France?
Yeah, it's a great question. So after the relationship we have, it's a familial relationship, honestly, with Atletico. We are very fortunate to bring on a club that has 117 years of history. And they have that format. It's part of their strategy, because they have got Atletico San Luis in the Mexican First Division, so in the Premier Division. So So yes, since that's happened, now that other teams across the globe have seen this, some global teams that have that in their strategy as well, they've reached out to us. So we've had, yes, there are French teams that have kind of tapped us and said what's happening. We've had teams from other parts of the world as well that are interested. I think as long as the two strategies fit each other, it fits our strategy and it fits their club's strategy and what they want to do, then I think it's good for the league. So yes, there's a possibility. I've said it before. I can't wait to get a team in Quebec. I mean, Montreal, Quebec City. Quebec and the soccer in Quebec is massive, right? It's one of the second biggest province in the country. That, from a soccer perspective, it deserves a professional team. We're right there in Ottawa, but it's still not close enough because it's not across the border. But I just know, being at Montreal Impact games, I see the passion for the game, and I see the following, and I see people even from the PLSQ. I see fans traveling in Ontario to play when Blainville comes into the Canadian Championships. I see that. That's fantastic to see. We need to do that.
And is it something possible in the near future?
2021 is going to be very difficult. This pandemic is, we're somewhat isolated and insulated in Canada. I think we're probably one of the safest countries in the world, and certain parts of the country even safer than others. But I think this is going to have a further reaching impact than we all thought from a business perspective. There's a recovery that has to happen here. So I think it would be very difficult to start a team in 2021 knowing that you may not even get fans in the stands at the beginning of the season, if at all, right? So but that doesn't mean that you still don't keep working forward, right? And so we're still having those discussions today. Fingers crossed. That's the way I look at it.
I don't want to steal a question from my co-host on the Montreal side of things or the Quebec side of things, so I'm going to go with on the field and use a bit of a Québécois perspective for our listeners on the MFC Radio. Two of the very exciting players in this league that were breakout stars last season and now this season, Diedine Abzi and now Mohamed Farsi, are both Québécois and have gone through the PLSQ system and are in essentially their first pro season. It's a little more complicated on Farsi's side, but let's just say first pro season full-fledged. It's been a trend in the CPL that some of the stars we saw with Borges last year were in essentially their first professional season. When you see this, is this what you wanted to bring to the CPL, or is this what you wanted to bring to Canadian soccer with the CPL?
Sure. We love bringing internationals in as well, young internationals even, and thinking that though some of those internationals might become citizens and start a family here and become Canadians, right? We all came from somewhere, right? But there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for young Canadian players, right? There are more Alphonso Davies and Jonathan Davids out there than we realize today, right? And the point is, though, we didn't have a pipeline for them. It was too small of a pipe, right? We need a giant pipeline of young players. And as I look to Quebec, I think there should be as many players coming out of Quebec to play professional soccer as there are coming from League One Ontario. And it's just a matter of how do we do that? We've had great discussions with Quebec Soccer. And Matthew, who runs Quebec Soccer, fantastic, and we have a good relationship. Again, this year we had big things planned for this year, but then this little global pandemic hit us, and so it's put everything a little bit on pause. But yeah, we're very excited about the amount of players that could come out of Quebec and play in the Canadian Premier League.
Mr. Clanachan, the level of competition of the league is very good. We just have to remember last year, Vancouver got eliminated by Calgary, I think, and there's a lot of young talents right now in the league. I just want to know, between you and me, is there the next Alphonso Davies or Jonathan David hiding somewhere in the CPL?
Well, you know what? If you look, there's some really dynamic players that are in the CPL, and there's some very young players that are actually playing very well this year. So I believe there's lots there's players there, and it takes a little bit of time. They may not come as quickly as maybe Alfonso came at 19 and what he's done this year. But Jonathan David, he before he went to Europe, he was sitting at home in Ottawa because he had been let go by the Vancouver Whitecaps. So, but when you talk about Cavalry beating Vancouver, I also was at both games for Montreal Impact and York 9. That was probably some of the most exciting soccer that I saw. Yeah, both of those games, the home and away, that could have gone either way, and eventually went on to win the Canadian Championship, which was fantastic.
To follow up on the Canadian Championship, there were rumors that eventually the champion of the CPL would get a spot in the Champions League. Is that something that has been revisited? I know a lot of the stuff is on hold right now because of COVID, but is that something that you're hopeful could happen in the next couple of years?
Yeah, right now they don't go straight in. They go into the knockout round, which is what Forge went into last year, and they did very well for themselves, right? But I think eventually you'd like to see that happen, but it's not there now. But now with the Canadian Championship this year, whoever wins the Island Games, not only do they get a bid there, they also get a bid if they win the Canadian Championship. So that's a straight-in one. And so potentially the second-place team here, and not confirmed yet, but the second-place team in the Island Games, if that were to happen and they won the double, the second-place team would also get into the knockout round, I guess they call it, right?
Yeah, just one question. Do we know when and where the final game will take place?
It's not been announced yet because it's gonna depend on who the team is, what stadium could potentially be used, and really, and then the time of year, because the MLS their schedule isn't completely finished yet,
right?
So everybody needs to know when they will be done, and then it's a matter of where do you play, right? Like it's one thing to play in Vancouver in a covered dome. It's another to play in Montreal if it's in December, or even Toronto, right? So it'll all come together pretty quickly once we get an idea of the schedules for everyone.
Tristan, you got another question?
Yes, absolutely. On the topic, we were talking a little bit about the PLSQ, and I'll give a shout out to Quentin Parissis of Quebec Soccer Magazine, who reported earlier this month that the PLSQ was eyeing a merger of sorts, or playing conjointly with League One Ontario as soon as 2021. My question would be, how much information can you say about this, and considering the relationship between the Canadian Premier League and League One Ontario, and how that would help? You were talking about more Québécois players, PLSQ players coming into the Canadian Premier League. Is that a way that could help the pipeline?
I think you're absolutely right. So we've had great conversation about cooperation between us, and certainly we're doing it with the League One women's group and Quebec Soccer as well. So for women, I think there's and we're talking about it for the men's level too, because the idea of an East and a West and being able to play together, and then creating some sort of a championship cup at that level, even going further outside of Quebec and Ontario, but using Quebec and Ontario as a bit of a foundation to build that on. That's the type of discussions we've had. And I think at the end of the day, if we do that, the more exposure that the players have to some of the professional coaches and the clubs and the scouts that are out there that we're looking at. There's so many good players. As I said earlier, in Quebec, I would expect a much higher amount. There's almost 50 players. Actually, there were 45 players in our first season last year that were League One Ontario graduates, where they had been in League One at one point or another. It was a much smaller number. I think less than a dozen out of the PLSQ. That's not because there's 1/4 the amount of 1/4 the amount of talent. It's being able to see the talent, find the talent, give the talent the opportunity to shine, and then move forward.
Obviously, the MLS loans out certain players to the CPL, and now we're hearing that the objective in the MLS over the next couple of years is to move forward with a sort of U23 league. What's your opinion on that? And do you feel like it'll take away a few of the players that you have in your league right now, and it'll give those players more options, or MLS teams the option of saying, we'll just keep them with us, have them play U23 instead of sending them to the CPL. How do you feel about that topic?
Well, I think anything the MLS can do to develop players is a good thing. I mean, they've been trying to do that. They try to do it through the academy system. I mean, it's pretty. Everyone's heard how I feel about academies, and I find at times, and even Mr. Saputo, who owns the Montreal Impact, I know how he feels about academies, and he and I share the same thoughts. I think sometimes they're not used the way they should be, and they don't work as well in North America because we don't have that 100 plus years of history, right? So my opinion is it's always about the most important thing is meaningful minutes for young players to play, and they have to be able to play against talent that is much better than them, because that's how they can measure themselves as they're gaining ground or not, right? And so you until you actually play against better talent, that's how you improve. And so the key thing there is we're very clear that that we put minutes around under 21s that have to play for the games. In the first 3 games in the island, the 3 of the teams blew through the under 21 minutes in the first 3 games. That's the level of youth talent that we're putting out there, and you can see it now with some of these players like Farzi and guys like that are just Abzi's the same way. They've all done a great job, right?
Mr. Clanachan, maybe 1 or 2 last questions. People, they want to know if there will be in the near future, a professional female CPL.
So we're doing a lot of work with when we purchased the League One Ontario, along with the 16 men's teams came 14 women's teams as well. So we now have we now are working with that league and also talking with Quebec. So we're trying to we have to take the standards and raise the standards and make sure that it does well, right? So build a firm base there, because that's going to be the feed. There's no doubt for professional. And then it's a matter of the right time. There's no point in rushing into this, because if people don't, if we don't have the right product and people aren't, and we're not ready for it, it won't work. It'll fail. So we totally hear that. We're trying to find what's the right path to it, and we've taken some steps along that by starting to shore up what we saw in League One Ontario, and Carmelina Moscato is the commissioner. You know Carmelina, I'm sure, because she was on the Canadian women's national team for many years, and she's probably one of the greatest women's soccer minds in Canada, and she has the street cred to back it up. So she's actually the commissioner of that league, and I know she's going to do great work there, and is doing great work already.
Pretty good. Tristan, maybe a last question for the commissioner?
Maybe, and yeah, you're absolutely right to shout out Carmelina Moscato. She's doing amazing on television as well. Maybe one last one, specifically on the field, about we expected Cavalry and Forge to be the top 2 just because of the quality. But when you look at the rest of the pack, there's still a good amount of parity. And we just look at Atletico Ottawa. If it wasn't for a few mistakes in the last game against, I believe it was Edmonton, they would be right up there with the top 4. Are you satisfied with the parity that we're seeing in the second season?
Yes, I am. So I look at the games that, just if you'll bear with me for a second. Atletico Ottawa is within is a red card and maybe running out of gas away from being undefeated. Very close too, except for the Valor game. The Valor game, it was 1-0 into almost the 90th minute, and then Valor scored 3 quick goals, and again run out of gas. Right. I look at York 9 versus Forge. Right. 3-2. 2-0. York 9 jumps out 2-0, and the next thing you know, Forge ties it back up, and then York 9 is, as opposed to collapsing, they come forward and they end up winning the game. There's a lot of that happening here. I watched Halifax and Pacific play. Great game. Went back and forth. Many passes strung together, almost equal possession of the ball. Saw that. So I've seen HFX Wanderers do it. I've seen Pacific do it. Edmonton has been a little bit snake bitten, but they've got a good club. When I watch them play, there's some good skill on that club. So it's I think the league, I would say that if you ask me what's your first opinion of year one versus year two, I can tell you the talent level's gone up. You can see the work that's been done in the off season by not only these coaches, but their scouting staff and the people they work with, and they're molding these teams into the teams they want to have with their style of play. And I think it's good entertainment.
Mr. Clanachan, it has been a privilege to have you on the show. We wish you good luck for the rest of the season, and we hope to find a cure against COVID-19 as soon as possible to bring back those passionate Canadian soccer fans into stadiums. Thank you so much, Mr. Clanachan.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Salut tout le monde. On se donne rendez-vous demain pour l'avant-match Impact de Montréal contre Toronto FC. À demain, tout le monde.
Salut.
Okay, guys, thank you.
IMFC Radio vous a été présenté par LABP Climatisation. Notre mission, travailler pour votre confort. Par Dr Graziella Giargiura. Soins dentaires pour toute la famille. Sharp, la technologie au service de la beauté. Par Aries, fabriqué pour la vie, fabriqué pour vous. Et par Europa, un café italien de torréfaction supérieure. IMFC Radio est propulsé par Patreon. Merci à nos abonnés. À très bientôt pour une prochaine édition de IMFC Radio.